competition, and it's keep growing since that time. Also, a special thanks to Red Bull for making this possible. Christina, we made it. KTM, why not Romà, Lopez, and Victor Vallejo. Victor, I would like to say that you demonstrate that sometimes your dreams can become true. And thanks to MotoStudent, hopefully you are there, but also thanks to your career. Irene Saderini, very thank you for being also our commander and conducting everything. But a special thanks to Andrea Dovizioso. I'm very glad to have you here. I'm remote. I would like to be there with you guys, but MotoGP probably is the top that everyone we are looking for. We dream in our days for MotoGP, and for the first time we create MotoStudent in the sense of from the lectures, from the university to the racetrack. For sure, Andrea, you will find that in here a lot great material for the future. And just let me say some words in Italian. Andrea, se si ve libero, se vuoi, puoi entrare come la pilota ufficiale la MotoStudent in luglio. Sei benvenuto. You got my number, Andrea. If you want, we welcome you here at Motorland. You know where it is for sure. But it will be also our pleasure to have you here. Nicolo, very thank you for leaving us your home, the University of Bologna, as for the first lecture. We are very pleased all you're doing for us, for MotoStudent, for MotoBoost. But as you know why we are here, and that's just to boost your career at this time with the KTM call. You know that this is the first lecture from various ones that we have. Remember that we have on the 20th of June the date for the registration. Don't miss it. Don't forget it. For sure, today is going to be a great day. Every day with you guys is a great day. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you very much for this 5 minutes of glory. And I hope to see you all here at Motorland Aragon, which I hope is your first home. It's not a second one anymore. Nicolo, I will see you for sure here at Motorland. Good luck, guys, and enjoy the lecture. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you so much. I just wanted to say that we are recording what is going on screen, so just everybody should know it. And now I would like to give the word to Irene Saderini. She's going to host this lecture. She's going to coordinate all the various questions and answers. So thank you, Irene, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Nicolo. Thank you to Daniel. Thank you. Please consider the invitation on Motorland, Nicolo, because it's a super good place. Hello, everyone. Hello, students from MotoBoost Competition from all over the world. As you can see, only the students from Bologna are here in this classroom physically, but hundreds of students are joining us via Teams. Red Bull MotoBoost main goal is to boost creativity and innovation, giving an extra motivation to engineering students. Thanks to the support of the Red Bull MotoGP Rookies Cup and KTM, some talented students are going to live extraordinary experiences. This year, you have the chance to win an internship in Moto3 department in KTM in Austria, so don't miss the chance and apply. Let me introduce to, again, Andrea Dovizioso. I assume you know him very well, so Victor Vallejo. Thank you, Victor, from KTM. And Romà Lopez from Red Bull Rookies Cup. Ciao, Romà. All set? We ready? So let's start the lecture. So the first question, I'll go very straight to the question, is for Victor. So can you explain the concept of aerodynamics?
Yes. So the aerodynamic is basically the science, which is study the interaction between the air, in this case, this flow, and a moving object. You can see, for example, 2 images where you can see the effect of this interaction between the flow and our object, our moving body, which is in our case a motorcycle. In the first one, in the left side, is It's the result from the wind tunnel when we are using some flow-based liquid just to see how the air is moving along the top fairing. So you can see very nice the light on this line. On in the right, you can see clearly a vortex generated by a rear wing in a Formula One.
So thank you, Victor.
No problem.
The second question is for Andrea. As the use of winglets has increased a lot recently, so can you explain your experience with aerodynamics? Maybe you change a little bit your riding style or your motor train. What's your experience with it?
Yes, the aerodynamic has been very important in the last 5 years, 6 years in MotoGP. The rules change year by year, but the wingless, the downforce of the wingless increase a lot. And from a rider side, and for me, it was very difficult at the beginning because it's like when you change a setup, and it's bigger than the change of the setup, and you have to change in the way you brake, in the line you have. Normally, when you have a lot of experience, you have your line in that track. But with the new aerodynamic, that changed, and at the beginning I didn't know because come out the wingless and you didn't know the reality on the bike, what you can feel on the bike. Normally the downforce on the braking is better. You are able to brake harder because you have more grip on the front tire, so you are able to brake harder later, but depends which aerodynamic you have. But the experience, from my experience, normally the entry of the corners change because it's a bit harder to enter to the corner, to turn the bike, but you can have less wheelie, so you can accelerate more. But the work with aerodynamics has been very important and very, very difficult, because I think on the bike, the rider, from a rider side, is very difficult to feel exactly what the aerodynamics doing, and every rider are able to ride in a different way. So this doesn't mean work for every rider. So it's very, 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 very difficult, and I was fighting a lot with engineer at the beginning because at the beginning they saw just the number and they can see easily better things. But when you are on the bike and you try to turn the bike, doesn't mean that it's right. So it takes time, especially from a rider side, to understand and to use the best potential of the aerodynamics.
So guys, Victor, Romà, I hope that maybe one day you will be in a box together with the rider as Andrea is, and talking about these things, and I can imagine your first time and thinking, what does it mean? I can promise you, but let's go on. So Victor, Romà, a question for you is, which are the main objectives in aerodynamics design, both of you?
Well, actually, as Andrea said, aerodynamics came up 5 years ago, 6 years ago. No one was used. Engineers can see clear numbers or clear better results, but it's difficult to make the riders to understand, as Andrea said. So it's trying to find the balance in between what the engineers are looking for and the results they are getting, and the riders' feeling, I guess. So I don't know if you would like to add some.
Well, from my point of view, from the engineer side, from the other side. So we basically have always three main objectives. Let's say it doesn't matter if it's a MotoGP, a Moto3, or a Moto2 bike, or is reduce drag, increase downforce. Basically, it's mainly in a MotoGP, and the cooling. This is also very, very important. And most time we are just always put this in the side, but it's really, really, really important. For sure, the reduced drag is the main target everywhere. So I really, really love this image, because you can really see how this is something from the 30s, no? And in this time they were already understanding how the aerodynamic can make your vehicle much efficient, no? And for sure, also for us, is one of the main targets. And of course, the downforce in the MotoGP is fundamental in this last year. Like Andrea says, is keeping the bike more planted, more in contact with the grip, with the tarmac, with the ground. And this is giving you tenths of a second in every lap, and in the end is giving you the wins. No? And of course, the cooling is a balance. We know that the performance of the engine is changing related to the temperature of the cooling system, of the engine, the water, the oil. So we need to keep a balance where we have a good performance from the engine side, but we also keep the lowest drag possible with the highest downforce. So it's always a balance, like I said before. And of course, like he said, and also Romà, is in a motorcycle, the rider is a huge impact in the system. It's not like in cars where the driver is sitting on the car, and the impact that they can have on the car in this case is very low. In a motorcycle, a rider is huge. He's moving around, is braking, accelerating. Also the feeling, this psychological side is also very important for them. If sometimes if you make a small change that you think that is nothing, but the rider, they see it and they say, oh, this is something nice, looks nice, like looks faster, they go faster. It's something that maybe they cannot know why, but they do it. And mostly when we are working, and Romà knows better than me, when we are working with small kids, 14, 15, 16 years old, the psychological side is amazing.
And this is the goal, I think. So let's move on track a while, Romà, because the more pieces the fairing have, the more pieces it's needed to change in case of a crash. So have you noticed significant changes to the aerodynamics these years?
Well, actually, we have two fields to talk about. First of all, we have on the image, we have a Red Bull Rookies bike, which is a standard KTM, let's say like 2014 spec, 2015. And Moto3 and Moto2, they have no aero devices. So as you can see, a Red Bull Rookies bike is just compounded by seven pieces of fairing. In a MotoGP, I would say that is way different, because for sure they have more parts, they have the aero devices. So for sure, when there is a crash, and because it's a bigger bike, it gets more damage. So more aero, more parts means more work to do on the box if there is a crash. As Victor was mentioning before, I mean, a bike on its own is aerodynamic. Even though we have a standard setup or standard bike, we are trying for the best. But there are some other things that are also affecting to aerodynamics. It's not only the bike on its own. It's the rider position on the bike, it's the helmet, it's the leather, it's the way they sit on the bike, the way they put the elbows down. I mean, everything has a huge effect on aerodynamics. So any single detail, any single detail can make a huge difference. Difference.
So a lot of things to put together. So Andrea, which is the modification that you notice the most due to aerodynamics?
Not easy to answer. I mean, it depends which kind of aerodynamics you put, because as you can see in the last 6 years, the aerodynamics change a lot. But normally the wheelie is the things you can feel immediately, because you have to set up in a completely different way the electronics, because you are able to use more power, because you have less wheelie. So that is a really good feeling, because you fight less with the bike and you can accelerate better. But also in the braking, especially with the Michelin tires, the aerodynamics, you have to do the aerodynamics and you have to follow the characteristic of the tires. The tires, I think, is the most important things on the bike. I mean, that created a problems of everything. I mean, the aerodynamics, you have to create the aerodynamics to the tire. So the emission, for example, doesn't have a lot of grip on the front, and you can lock the front tire when you brake straight. So you need a lot of downforce because you are able to brake harder. Because when you lock the front tire, when you are straight, this is the limit, and you are not able to brake harder. So if you have a good downforce in that situation, in that particular moment, help you. But a lot of downforce can create a problem in the middle of the corners, because it's when you release the brake and you have to turn the bike want to go straight. So it's very difficult to create a good aerodynamic in every area, straight to make a lot of speed at the end of the straight, on the braking, in the middle of the corners. When there is the wind, affect a lot. I think the wingless, when there is the wind, in one side is better because you have the front a bit more on the ground, but when the wind is not consistent, in the middle of the corners, the bike move, so you lose the feeling on the front. So it's very difficult also in that condition.
A very difficult reply. So, Romà, listening to Andrea, according to his words, is maybe aerodynamic used as another setup variable, maybe?
Absolutely, yes. I mean, Andrea has mentioned several times already that, I mean, aerodynamics has become an important part. It's as important as the bike setup, let's say. In the pictures, you can see the difference. That's the first KTM on the left side. It was released, I mean, back in 2016, and the current bike. So you can see that the first one is way rounded, and the other one has way more apex and trying to find more downforce, which is true that nowadays in MotoGP is regulated. I mean, every rider on the team can have two versions of the fairings, because otherwise it would be unlimited, and it will become crazy for the riders testing. Well, yeah, and just to keep it, let's say, to keep the budgets equal or as equal as they can be. But absolutely, yes, it's another setup to take into account. It depends on the circuit, it depends on the rider braking style, on the rider riding style, accelerating style. So, I mean, it can affect to the whole bike. You can have a good setup, I mean, bike setup, but if the aerodynamic is not helping you, you are done. Is that simple? Okay,
so Victor, which are the resources of a factory like KTM aerodynamics development? I mean, focus on Moto3 prototype.
Well, then actually the resources, it doesn't really matter. It is for a Moto3, for a MotoGP, or for another kind of categories. They are more or less the same. Just to know the resources, you need to know also what do you want to do, no? What are the steps that you need to take from the really beginning, from the scratch to have it the final product on the track racing, no? So I would say that the first step is having the idea, no? Having the product in your mind, and for this you need to have nowadays at least we need to have a computer and a CAD program, so a computational like a design program, no? Sometimes also we can have some reverse engineering, so it means that we go from a scanner to the model in the computer model, and we can replicate it. Then we need to simulate it. Why do we know? So how do we know if our idea is good or not? No, we need to first simulate it, and for this, from the aerodynamic side, we are using the CFD, the computational fluid dynamics. It is basically just modeling the reality in our computer. It's like having a wind tunnel in our computer. And there you can really make, the big advantage of this is that you can really make a lot of tries. So like you can try a lot of ideas, a lot of things in a very short time and with a very, very, very reduced cost. If not, you need to imagine that you need to design, build, try on the track every time. With this, you can have I don't know, 100 of ideas before bringing to the track, and you only bring in the one that they are really good. So this is a huge advantage when they was coming out. One that you have spotted the good thing, let's say the good part. First, we bring it normally to the wind tunnel, so we need to have not to have a wind tunnel, but a connection to a wind tunnel, obviously. And then to try and correlate what we see in the CFD with the wind tunnel. There in the wind tunnel, we can measure all the aerodynamic forces, apply on the bike. We can also make some radiator measurement. We can put a rider on top and see how the position of the rider is changing and how it's affecting. We can do a lot of things. And then when we have and we are really sure, at least from our side, from the factory side, that this part is giving us an advantage, we bring it to the race. Or first to the test team, try in the track with our test rider, or sometimes also with the race riders, and then to the race team.
Okay, so
we need a computer, programs, and a wind tunnel.
And that's it. And you can do
engineers.
it. Engineers. But we have a lot of engineers today here this morning. Let's talk about the cooling design. Andrea, can it make really a difference? I mean, for example, back in the days, Jerez 2020 was a challenging race due to hot temperatures. So can you share with us your experience on the track?
Well, not really. I mean, yeah. In the last few years, we work a lot on the fuel tank, and it's not anymore the fuel tank here. The fuel tank normally is behind the seat, under the seat. But there is not a lot of things to do for riders. I think it's more about for the engineer to have the right temperature on the bike, to work on the best potential, but in that condition, it was horrible, and that's it. In Jerez last year was really on the limit to race. When you feel the heat from the bike is really on the limit, like in Malaysia. But in that case, you can do something during the weekend. That is the bike, and that is the situation, and you have to keep fighting.
Okay, so we will cut this answer.
Exactly.
For example, did you change your approach during the race to be more in the slipstream or not? Because of course, if you are behind another bike, less fresh air with exhaust and so on.
Yeah. Depends in which track you are, but normally it's difficult to change the line, especially because you have a lot of power. And you have to make the straight. Normally you're doing left and right to wheelie less, so you're not able to decide the line. So normally it's more about brake not behind the riders for the slipstream, because you are not able to stop the bike. But for the air, for the heat, not really. For sure, if you are on front, it's better. But exactly, but most of the time you are not able to decide that.
So Romà, when it's not so hot, how do you assess to use any aerodynamics device or not on track?
Well, actually nowadays it has become a must. It's not something you can decide. I mean, all the MotoGP in the grid are having some aero device. So if you have to go to fight with the best ones in the world, you have to be using at least the same tools. So absolutely, it's not something that the riders are deciding. Otherwise, maybe Andrea would prefer having no devices. But nowadays, we are talking about a bike that is 157 kilos, more than 250 horsepower. So if you want to reduce, or around 250 horsepower, if you want to really reduce the use of the electronics, because it's cutting power all the time, you have to use the aero devices. At the end, what they are trying to focus is on reducing that. I mean, the abuse of having traction control that is cutting the power, So just to maximize the potential of the bike is by using the winglets.
Thank you, Romà. So, Victor, this question is for you. And which are the purposes of inner flows?
So there is, I would say there are three main targets. We will be to optimize the radiator performance, which is also the engine performance. The cooling of the electronic part is also very important, and the wake management. So, for example, in this image, you can see this is just showing what is the air that's coming out passing through the radiator, and this is a complete mess. It's something is going all around the rider. It's making your wake bigger. So it's quite interesting and quite important to be able to manage this. Of course, the better your wake is, the faster you go, and the more difficult for your competitor behind you to follow you, because also you are creating a higher pressure behind you, and for them it's creating more drag. So it's everything an advantage. Like I said before, the radiator management, the engine management temperature, this is super important. In our category in Moto3, it's a small engine, very limited. Whatever you can get is huge. It's huge, and this you can say is in races also. If one rider is sitting in one position or in another, is also making a big change. Leathers, helmets, everything is a combination. So in the end, to win a championship is a combination of a lot of small factors that they need to click together. Very good to do it. So.
Well, in fact, just adding to what Victor was saying, you can, I mean, I think that it was back in 2019, the IRTA, which is the organization ruling the MotoGP rule book and the way you have to ride. They say that it was not allowed anymore for the Moto3 riders not to be with both hands at the handlebars, because on the way of maximizing these aerodynamics, they were like putting the left hand, which is not useful on the straight, inside the fairing. So they were not at the handlebar, they were like on the triple clamp. So they have to stop it, because, I mean, any single tenth you can win on the straight, it's free time you get.
Okay, so finally here we are. Andrea was waiting for this moment, I'm not joking. And you guys, all the students, has got 20 minutes for open questions. Nicolo, how can we manage it? You're trying to, is there anybody ready here in Bologna? Okay, many people. I think we need a microphone or something. Don't be shy, guys. Do we need a microphone, maybe, Christine? No? Okay, so.
You can try to speak loud, so maybe we can hear you from here, and then in the
just
meantime,
scream.
I'm opening up the chat so that we can also.
For the engineers, how is different to the aerodynamics for bikes instead of cars, and why it took so long for it to come to race?
Well, when you are talking about a car, it's a closed space where the driver, on that case, it has so the impact of the driver is a few bar. It's a small bar on the car. So you can see on a Formula One that you just see the helmet and not the whole helmet, just half of the helmet. Meanwhile, at the motorbikes, the impact of the rider is, I would say, 70% easy. And he's moving when he's braking, and he's putting weight behind when he's accelerating. So the way you have to analyze the data is totally opposite. I mean, the effect it has the rider and the bike. The bike has more open spaces, so it means more turbulences, so it means more airflow to control. And that's why we have Victor here, that is the guy taking care of covering as much as possible.
And you need also to take into consideration the movement of the bike respect to a car, no? The car is almost not pitching, almost not rolling. It's just very few degrees, maybe 1 to 3 degrees maximum. We are talking here about 60, 65 link angle.
It's a bit dangerous.
It's enough.
So also when they are braking, the angle is changing a lot, and this is making everything much more different, much more difficult. When the Formula One engineer aerodynamics, they are working in the wind tunnel, they're having some aero mapping, and they are changing the setup of the car. They are braking, accelerating, cornering, and so on. But these changing are super small. It's much more easier to optimize when you have a small window than when you have a bigger window. So.
Anybody else? Okay, let's go.
Victor, as you said in the starting, like driver plays a very important role, and he's also he creates a lot of drag on a bike because he's not treated like in a Formula One. So, like since now MotoGP guys are using too much winglets, have you guys ever considered or have you ever implemented like a vortex generator, which Formula One guys do in the front wing to shield the tires? Because tires are also very huge drag feeders in a car. Have you guys ever considered using winglets as vortex generators so that you can shield the rider much better?
For example, about the front tire is very tricky because of the regulation. We cannot cover the complete tire. We have a very limited window, let's say, or area that we can really cover with our front fender. And the front fender in a small bike like a Moto3 is having quite a big impact in the handling of the bike, because it is something that we cannot never forget. We need to make a fast bike, but also an easy ride bike. Because again, the rider is a huge percentage on the system. The voltage generator is also quite tricky. You need also to put it very good. What's happening if you are optimizing only for straight line position where the rider is inside the fairing, but then when he's going out and braking, or in the middle of a fast corner where they are leaning out, then maybe you are creating more drag because this vortex is also impacting the rider. So you need to have a lot of points into consideration, not only when they are in the straight line.
Guys, anybody for Andrea, as he's leaving in about 10 to 15 minutes? Okay, please.
I don't know. Maybe it's better if he comes here with the microphone so that everybody can see him also from remote. If you can stand up and come here, so just to make your question. If not, I think most of the people from remote wouldn't hear it.
Okay,
Please.
let's come.
If you want to use this, you can leave that one to Andrea.
Hello. Am I audible? Yeah. Okay. So a question for Andrea. We were talking about how there is generally a gap between what the rider feels and what the numbers are showing during the design phase. From your experience, do you think it's a good idea, for example, to involve even the rider, even during the design part, by somehow finding a correlation between what the rider feels and what the number is showing? Because I think this is probably one of the problems that needs to be bridged in order to really find a correlation, because good numbers, as you said, the rider cannot use it, it's useless. So do you think it's a good idea? And if yes, how do you think it can be done?
This is my question to you. It's very difficult to to improve that things, because with some riders, I think is a good idea to involve the rider with the engineer to develop and take a decision together, but with most of the rider, not really. Because I think are two completely different worlds. And the rider side, I mean, from a rider, you really don't know anything. And most of the time, I think when the rider want to say something about from an engineer side, most of the time is wrong. And I think the engineer decide to split these things, And I think the approach of the engineer normally is to create a gap between these two things, because the engineer wants to control everything.
You can create a new generation of engineers.
So I think is can be a good idea, but very, very difficult to manage.
Can I respond to that? For sure. I disagree because
a good point to start.
I'm happy. I'm open.
let me explain.
Sure.
I disagree with the perspective that engineer wants to be in control, because I think if the rider doesn't win, the work of the engineer there is no value if we don't win. So to me, because I was working for a while, and I think that listening to the customer, in this case the rider, is very important to achieve the good result. And of course it's difficult. Maybe you'll understand how difficult it is, but I think that is the most important thing. So yes, I disagree, but yet I agree as well.
No. I understand what you say, and it's smart, but it's difficult to manage these two words, and maybe it's okay to continue to split these things, because if I think everybody have to make experience during the race weekend when the riders stop and explain what's going on the track, you're laughing, because it's a completely different way to explain everything. I mean, from the rider side, when explain the limits of the bike or where the rider is struggling, also in the way you speak is completely different than from the engineer. So this is one thing's very difficult in the motorsport, because the drivers or the riders have to work with the engineer, and that two people are opposite, completely opposite, because the engineer study a lot, and they want to understand everything from a number. The rider side is completely opposite. The rider side want to feel something, and the riders are for him is clear what he wants, but doesn't have any idea how to improve the situation. So it's a completely different world, and it's very, very difficult to manage these two things. But you can ask also to them to understand a bit more.
We need a Google Translate from rider to engineer, basically.
That is what I was talking about, to bridge.
This is the thing is like we obviously and Romà knows also, after when the rider arrives to the box and you unload all the data and go to the telemetry and you see all the data, you trust them, because the data, they are not lying, you know. And like Andrea says, for them is a feeling thing, and for us it's a number thing, and you need to be able to correlate what they are doing, what they are feeling, what the data they are saying, and sometimes what they are feeling in a way is almost completely different, or is opposite what you see in the data. Like the rear tire is pushing me out, and I have some shattering in the front, and so on. You need to understand why it's coming this, and maybe it's not coming from the rear, maybe it's coming from the front, or the other way around. So it's not so easy. So for sure we are trying to close this bridge, and this is why we have also our track supporting and people in the track, that they are with them, with the team every weekend, every test, and then they are also working in the factory. So for sure we have also this bridge between factory and rider. They are not alone there, and we are in the factory for sure.
Thank you anyway.
Thank you. So
basically, Andrea, nothing changed. So he's the engineers, and he said, I do the data and you ride the bike. So this is it.
So maybe someone proposed a solution in the chat. So we just open up a little space also from the chat. So probably the solution could be that the driver could be an engineer or vice versa, and then we would have solved the problem. What do you think?
So we got maybe some question, Nicola, from...
We do have a few things.
Team students.
From remote, for example, dear Andrea, Do you think teams must develop special aerodynamic fairings for windy days instead of drilling the usual fairings?
This is a nice question, but I think from what I know, nobody have the answer, because with the wind, it's very difficult to ride the bike. Depends in which track you are, how is the layout of the track, but it's very, very difficult. But as you can see, there is a lot of different fairing, and in the past, before the wingless, for example, in the past, when I was in 250, Aprilia and Honda have a completely opposite way to approach the fairing. Why? I mean, I think that it's very difficult, still is very difficult to have a clear idea what you need. You can have some ideas, or you can have a clear ideas in some part of the corners, some part of the entry, but to have a completely package of the straight, braking, middle of the corner and exit, I think is so difficult, almost impossible to have. So you need a balance, a compromise, and everybody are working so hard in this moment in that side. What in the past nobody really put a lot of effort.
Maybe we have a couple more questions, if you agree, from remote. So the one is, how long does it take to get used to changes on the bike settings for a rider? I know that they don't train on the bike as much as motocross riders, for example.
We MotoGP riders don't train. Every year change the rules. 10 years ago there was a lot of tests. Now no. This is a big limit, but it's the same for everybody, so it's okay. But this is another important things. There is a lot of developing from the company, but at the end you have to decide everything from the bike in 6 days pre-season, and this is almost impossible. You have to be lucky with the weather, and it is impossible from a rider side to be fit for 6 days, because normally you stay 2 months and a half without the bike, and also if you train, you're not able to push for 6 days, and it's very limited and very difficult. But this is in the way is MotoGP. So when the rules are the same for everybody, it's okay, but it's very difficult, and an experienced rider or a rider can feel easily what you're trying when you ride, can develop the bike much better than a fast rider. You can be the fastest, but you are not that good to develop the bike. So you can be good in that test because maybe you are fast and the base of the bike is good. But to be fast and develop the bike in a right way and for the season, I think is very, very difficult, and not many riders are that good for that. But the MotoGP changed a bit on that, because now there is more engineer on our championship, and there is more work during the winter from the engineer than the rider. So the engineer decide a lot of things before you go on the track. So are changing a lot the MotoGP in this moment.
One last question from the chat, then we go back in the room if we still have a few minutes, and it could be for, I think, the three of you. So the question is, for Andrea, in your opinion, what skills should a track engineer have to be able to interact effectively with the rider? So what kind of skills, what kind of capacity, abilities you would like to have from your track engineers to interact in the best way with you?
Well, the experience makes the difference for sure on track. That it will be very important. But what I can say from a rider side is easy to see an engineer too close and thinking about just from an engineer side. I think this is really good, but limited. And when you make the experience during the race weekend, the World Championship, you will understand more, and in the way you approach the riders, because it's different. That make the difference, and also because the rider can make the difference at the end. So open mind, because I can understand it's difficult from an engineer side, because it's normal to be
a very clear comment, I guess.
to be like that, but make the difference to be open. And with my experience in the World Championship, I work a lot with engineers, especially now in MotoGP. And for example, I created a special relation with my last engineer in Ducati. We worked together 5 years. And the relation I had with him created a big difference, because it wasn't just about numbers and or telemetry. This is one part, very, very important, but be able to work and understand the riders help you on your work, on your job. So that makes a difference.
Okay, so they should be able to listen to what you say and to understand, try to understand your feelings in the way in which they can be translated into modifications in the design or so. Do you want to add some comments to this? On the other side, I mean.
I think sometimes I have the feeling that the rider need more psychologist beside them than a engineer, because if you arrive there and you see a super experienced rider, what are you going to tell him? Sometimes you need more to help him from the mental side and more from the rider side. You're not going to tell Andrea how he needs to ride the bike, because of course he's doing much better than you, but helping in another way, I think.
Okay.
Well, yeah, as Andrea said, I think that it's more to have a good relation and creating a good base and working together. I mean, numbers at the end are not the ones making the difference. You can have a pretty fast bike on the weekend, but if the rider is not performing, there are no results. Meanwhile, maybe the bike is not that good, or maybe it's not the best one on the track, but the rider feels comfortable enough to make the difference. So it's not all the numbers, it's not all the riders, it's having a good balance in between both sides and creating that special atmosphere that makes the rider to feel comfortable and that he can feel the potential of the bike.
Okay. Yeah, you can come here. Whenever she's coming, you forget to mention that Pigiamino, your engineer, was a rider before. So maybe that helps.
Yeah.
It's right to be a rider. You pretend to be a rider.
Exactly.
Okay.
Hello, my name is Kayla Rowland. So I think you talked about this a little bit, Andrea, but I guess how involved are you with the technical side, like working with the engineers? Like when they're designing everything, when they're changing everything, how involved are you like with that process? Like, do you sit in a room with them or all of that?
Well, I think every team are organized in a completely different way. They are listen every riders. They are try to understand, and they created everything by themselves in the company. How much the rider is involved is the team decide. So it depends how good you are to give a feedback, and it's very difficult for another thing's very important for riders is to understand how to explain to the engineer what you need, and that is another thing's very, very difficult. So but every team from my experience, when I raced with Yamaha, Honda, Ducati, and there was a big difference. So doesn't exist one way to do it. I think if the rider have experience and can feel a lot of things on the bike, have to be involved to developing, but it's not that easy.
Right. Also, I have a second question. So, how is it like changing your technique through the driver, like through the race, like when conditions change? Like, I guess like with aerodynamics and stuff. For example, like one time I was riding a motorcycle and I was riding on the road and we were passing big trucks, 18-wheelers. That's what we call them in America. I don't know what they're called in Europe. And so like I was riding and I was passing the truck, but like there's so much wind, like I can also feel it in the car where like the wind pulls the car in. So I'm on a motorcycle and I'm passing the truck and I can really feel the wind. And so like I really had to change my technique because I was like, this is a lot of wind and it's moving me. And so like I like changed my technique mid-drive, and after that like I was pretty good passing all the trucks on the road, and there was a lot of trucks. So I had to do this like all up and down the road. So I'm just kind of wondering like, what is it like changing that technique, like mid-drive, mid-corner, wind's blowing, wind's not blowing, whatever. Yeah.
Well, the positive things of these sports is the rider are able to affect a lot the setup and everything. So sometimes is a limit because when you are not able to be that good and some other rider are better than you, it's difficult to change. But the nice things of this sport is the rider affect a lot if we compare the cars. On the cars, you have to create a good setup, and the drivers can do something, but not that much. On a bike, you are able to, with your movement on the bike, affect a lot. To be fast in the qualifying, to be good at the beginning of the race, when it's raining, when it's windy, and you have to constantly adapt and change. You have to be very open to make a change, because every time there is something new and you have to adapt. As you can see, also the riding style of riders changed a lot in the last 10 years. But that comes from the mental side. You have to be open and try to understand what you can do. During your career, it's not that easy to change the position on the bike, because you are racing from a long time. So it's difficult, but it's very important to constantly study the competitors, because for sure there is something they are doing better than you, and that is another things make different.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you, Andrea. So to the students, I'm so sorry, but Andrea is going to leave. And to the students,
very important.
It's very important, so I cannot say no, Andrea, I'm sorry.
So please stand up and come here quickly.
Hello. Okay, so let's say you have a big accident during an FP1, which is like the starting of the weekend. How do you cope with that? Because I've been involved in a lot of bike accidents, and after it takes a while to like get back, sit on the bike and go at the same speed, and you have to do it in a couple of hours again for FP2, and then you have qualifying, and then you have race. How do you mentally cope with that? How do you prepare yourself to put yourself back on the bike and then push again with like 350 kph?
Yes, it's a difficult things, but also that every rider is approaching a different way. Depends what happened, if you get hurt or why happen. If especially why happen. If you understand, if you have that under control. But this is one thing normal for us. You have to be strong, and you can't have that limit. You have to continue to push because every time you are on the bike, you have to pass your limits. Every time, it's not about speed, because to do that speed in the track, you don't feel that. It's about every time you approach a corner and the brake, you are on the limit of the bike. You lock the front, you you lose the front in the middle of the corners. Most of the time on a TV you can't see that, but we are fighting constantly every corner in that situation, and it's difficult to manage, but it's the reason why not many riders are able to arrive in that level, and have to be normal. The problem if you get hurt, that can be a limit, but most of the riders after a crash are able to enter in the same practice and make a better lap time on the next exit. So you have to be strong. From the mental side, you can have that limit because you are not able to stay there on your career, because you can do one good year, but that have to be, you have to be strong and constantly push. You don't have another option.
No option left. So thank you.
Thank you.
And Andrea, just to let you know that we are still waiting for your next lap time. Anyway, thanks a lot. Your next lap time, we will read it in some tracks. Do you have something to say about it?
No.
Anyway, we have to say ciao to Andrea.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yes, some motocross things to do today. Ciao. Ciao, Yuri. Ciao, Victor. Ciao, Romà. So let's go on. I'm trying to catch in the eyes from somebody from Unibo Motorsports.
Someone,
which
yes.
is you.
We have
Can
a
you
free
join
chair
us
there.
here?
Yeah.
Oh, super cool. We have a chair for you. You represent the winners of 2020 Red Bull MotoBoost. So congratulations, first of all.
Thank you.
I have some question for you.
Say
Say your name again for the camera, please.
I'm Matteo Bettini. I was the Aerodynamic division manager for the 2020 student. Yeah.
Congratulations again.
Thank you.
So Matteo, can you tell us something more about this super cool project? Example, which are the resources of our MotoStudent team to deal with aerodynamics in your experience?
Aerodynamics is a very complex field, and both for the theoretical background necessary to understand the flow field around a complex object like a motorbike, and both for the computational resources needed for the CFD simulation. For the theoretical background, our university is fundamental, and they gave also the possibility to use the laboratories of to produce the carbon fiber of our motorbike. While for the CFD part, our sponsor are fundamental because they gave us the software necessary to perform this simulation and also the computational power needed. And thanks to one of our sponsors, we have also the opportunity to test our motorbike in a day of wind tunnel testing to verify our simulation.
Thank you, Matteo. And may I ask you that, do you design and simulate internal flows of your prototype?
To simulate our motorbike, we start from the CAD model of the real motorbike. We apply some simplification, right, removing the small edges or small baffles that are not important for aerodynamic calculation. And so the model we simulate is very close to the real one. And so also all the internal flow is simulated, and for example, also the effect of the radiator on the aerodynamics.
And which are your, let me say, targets on aerodynamics on your prototype?
For a MotoStudent bike, it's fundamental to reduce the drag because the power is very limited. So every drag reduction lead to an increase in maximum speed and acceleration, while the vertical forces are plays a secondary role, but also in this case, having as said before, having a greater downforce on the front of the motorbike could help, especially in the braking, since the wheel limit is difficult to reach for our motorbike.
Matteo, weeks ago, your team received a very important news. This is a surprise for you. Let me show you something about that moment.
Non siate preoccupati, non siate tesi, non è un esame.
C'è un motivo particolare per cui io sono qua.
Dovreste aver ricevuto il messaggio, se volete dare un'occhiata ai vostri cellulari.
And the winner of the 2020 Red Bull MotoBoost Challenge is Univo Motorsports Team, racing team of the University of Bologna.
Ma che bello! Andiamo al GP di Austria. Oddio!
Tutto vero, ragazzi. Farete parte del team della Red Bull MotoGP Rookies Cup.
Ci abbiamo lavorato tanto e è davvero una grande soddisfazione.
Dunque, io non so, sono emozionato, davvero è un momento speciale.
We are making part of the history of MotoStudent.
Abbiamo tutti un cuore che batte sul motorsport e su Unipo Motorsport.
Ora è difficile dopo questa notizia tornare a studiare.
Nicolò, you're very emotional.
I mean, I'm so, let's say, thankful for having this opportunity to spend my time with such students, and really it's something that makes me feel alive and thankful for the luck I had, and yeah, it also keeps me young, I think. This I shouldn't say it myself, but yes, it's really something I'm very grateful for. So it was not fake.
We know that's super cool, Nicolò. So congratulations again. And so you're flying to Spielberg, and you will become a MotoGP Rookies Cup engineers for a week. How do you feel?
Me and my colleagues are very excited because it's a very unique experience. I think to work in a racing team is the dream of all the students which participate to the MotoStudent, and having the chance to follow a professional team during a race weekend, it's a experience. And I think that from this experience we can learn a lot, and so we want to thank, me and my colleagues want to thank Red Bull for this opportunity.
So thank you, Matteo, and to the student here and for the students who are joining us via Teams. This is a once-in-a-life chance, once-in-a-life opportunity, as Matteo can testify. So don't miss it and apply it. So this is it. You can clap your hands for Nicolò and for everybody. So this was the first lecture of 2021 Red Bull MotoBoost Challenge. Do not forget that you students, MotoBoost students, can win an internship you have the chance to win an internship in Moto3 department in KTM in Austria. So congratulations again, you will fly to Spielberg. And I have to read it because I have to be thankful to the University of Studies of Bologna, and in particular to Professor Nicolò Cavina. To the MotoStudent organization who made that possible, and to the people who is working hard on the project from Spain. So, hola España. To KTM and to Red Bull MotoGP Rookies Cup that are making students' dream come true. And finally, the last thanks to the Red Bull MotoBoost, whose main goal is to give wings to engineering students from all over the world. And let me say, this is happening. So, congratulations again.
Thank you.
This is it. Thank you, Nicola.
Thank you, Red Bull. Really, it has been a great pleasure to host you here today. So we're waiting for the next edition of such very interesting lectures. And well, I didn't want to spoil your closure. Sorry, but I think we have had a great chance today, also to learn and to have a direct contact with Andrea Dovizioso and with the engineers who follow him during his very complex activities on track. So thank you again, and see you next time.
Ciao, guys. We did it. Mascherina. How do you call it in Spanish? Come si chiama questo in spagnolo?
Mascarilla.
Mascarilla.
Ha perso qualche anno di vita, non so se l'hai notato.
Sì, ho visto che era un po' teso, ragazzi.
Quando hacen las simulaciones.
Ma tu sarai in Austria, no?
No, ma allora, la Spagna sono loro, sì.
Logran calcular el tráfico.
Immagino.
Si parlava di apply per MotoBoost, vado sul sito di KTM.